Welcome back to Extraordinary Strides, where we celebrate ordinary folks doing extraordinary things through running, movement, and sometimes a little bit of stubbornness. Today's episode is a wee bit different, my friends, but it is going to be a fun one. I'm bringing on someone who knows me better than anyone, even if he still doesn't fully understand my obsession with running. That's right. After recording the episode with Lynn about our spectators and how spectators are such an important part of our lives, I thought, who better to bring than my partner, the man who has witnessed every early morning alarm, every sweaty post-run hug, and probably regrets agreeing to this right here and now, but he is going to be joining us today. He is not a runner, and trust me, he's going to remind you of that. But he's been by my side through my running journey, cheering me on his own way. Some of you guys may recall some of his ways of cheering me on, but we're going to dive into what it's like living with a runner when you're not one, his unique and often, in my opinion, hilarious perspectives on running culture, and how we balance our very different worlds. I promise this episode will be filled with laughs, insights, and maybe even a little heart and soul. So let's get this party started. Hello, buddy. Welcome on in. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yes, it's very nice to be here, particularly on this side of the mic.
I feel like you had a bit of trepidation when I proposed the idea of you coming on, but I do appreciate you agreeing to it. And I'm sure it had nothing to do with the fact that I bribed you with buying you a couple of beers.
Yes, the 18-pack kind of helped, yes.
Okay, my friend, I want to know, what would you like the audience, and for the purpose of this conversation, for us to call you? Are you going to go with officially Mr. Strides, or maybe the non-runner in chief, or are you just going to be plain old buddy?
Yeah, I like buddy.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a buddy.
You are. You're definitely my number one buddy. We're a little vague about his official identity because he's got a job that sounds way cooler than I think it actually is, but I'm not allowed to tell you.
Oh, most definitely way cooler.
It sounds way cooler, but I'm not allowed to tell you more. So just roll with it, friends. For the purpose of this interview, we're bringing on Buddy, my partner, and truly the person who's by my side during all of the ups and downs that this whole running journey has taken me on. So with that said, I'm going to dive right into a few different questions, but I do want to start this off with expressing how much I appreciate you putting up with this world, because I know that it definitely comes with its quirks. But when you first met me, what were your thoughts about runners or running in general? And you're welcome to be honest. I'm pretty sure that for the purpose of this conversation, I think I can handle your honesty.
Oh, I'm sure it's probably nothing you haven't heard before. Actually, running or runners were never in my world, never gave it a thought. It's just wasn't anything.
Well, I mean, I know that running is not something that you necessarily do. Your aspect of fitness is more focused on strength training and weightlifting. But at some point you had to have run or encountered runners. So you had zero thought whatsoever. Like, did you see any local races, or you had heard of the Boston Marathon? Anything kind of came into play?
Yes, of course, everybody is familiar with the big runs, Boston, New York and such. And locally, yes, they always had 3Ks and 5Ks, and I stayed away. I learned where the road closures were, and basically I cursed them because I couldn't get the coffee enough, and I just despise them.
Every runner knows that you're a non-runner by the fact that you've referenced 3Ks, but we're not gonna be judgy here. We're fully leaning into appreciating you. So it basically was more of an annoyance when you thought of running, or just kind of something total peripheral, something you had read about.
I have to appreciate the fact that people around the world love to run. So you can't make fun of something that so many people enjoy doing. I just don't want to be inconvenienced by it.
Nothing should stand in between you and your coffee. I get it.
Yeah, you go do what you do. And if you like that, that's great. Yeah, so I just basically ignored it.
Okay. Did you have any idea how much running was going to become a part of your life by being with me?
No.
Did I sell you a bad bill of goods? I feel like, did I?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to dive more into that a little bit more, but I'm kind of curious, since you did say that running was something that you kind of had in the peripheral, would you say that there's anything in particular about running that doesn't really make sense to you specifically?
So it makes sense. What it is, it's just not my
cup of tea.
It's just not my cup of tea. I'm lazy. You know that. I put big dent in couch.
Efficient. You're efficient.
I don't like getting hot. I don't like the exertion that I feel. I don't like taking tons of showers. I don't like the laundry that comes after that. I don't like the fact that I can't cool down. I dare not get in my car because, well, you know my car, and I'm not putting a sweaty body in my car. Yeah, for me, there's nothing that called to me.
So I'm going to tell you right now so that you do know that I don't think there's any runner that's listening to this right now that likes getting hot, sweaty, gross, having to do all the laundry, or the fact that it does have a lot of different aspects of our life that it kind of controls the narrative of our day-to-day life. So I think that most runners will agree that it can be difficult and inconvenient, but the juice is worth the squeeze. Like the rewards are so much worth all of those different efforts or inconveniences.
From a health perspective, that's probably right. But when I need help peeling off my shirt, something's wrong. No, I don't enjoy that. That's not hot.
We're in Florida. That's the case for summer here, regardless if you're a runner or not.
So, surprisingly, I'm a big beach person and I don't mind getting wet there. And getting wet there is different than the getting wet when you run. You're still totally saturated.
But it's more refreshing.
No, it's a sticky, nasty kind of wet that your clothes go plop when they hit the ground. It's just not, for me, dignified.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's not for you.
Yeah.
But it has become a large part of your life just by association.
God, it's become 90% of my life.
It is. I feel like that's all I talk about. I'm so sorry.
It's all you talk about.
Literally.
Yeah.
Okay. With that said, can you think of potentially any positives that running has brought to your life by being associated with a runner?
So nothing positive about running, but the association with the runner, most definitely. We have gone on some fantastic vacations because of the running.
Yeah, runcations is what we call them here around these here parts.
I call it a vacation.
Okay.
I've gone places that I would never have gone myself had it not been because of this running.
Yeah.
And a lot of runners, they fly in, they do their run, and they leave as soon as possible to remote locations like we did in Germany and Tokyo, where we made almost a month's stay out of it. So had it not been for the running, I don't think I ever would have traveled to the places I traveled. Got to experience the experience that we did. And it was absolutely a fabulous, beautiful time. So at the end of all this training for a year and a half training to go somewhere, it was worthwhile. So from that perspective, that was great. But we agreed together, we're going there. Let's make a big thing of it.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting when you say this, buddy, is that there are some trips that we've done that there's no reason why we haven't gone there and done the trip or the vacation without the race or the run. But there's something about attaching the trip with a purpose that seems to give us a little bit more of a catalyst, or a little bit like ignites a little bit of a fire for us to actually move forward with it. And I'm going to talk about DC. For everyone who's been listening to the podcast, they know that I did Marine Corps 50K last year. And I've wanted to go to DC my entire life. And at that point, I had traveled internationally and still hadn't gone to DC. And if it wasn't for this specific race, I just would have never prioritized going into that area. Now, I know you've been there several times. So I'm going to ask you that specifically. How does it differ, if there is a big difference, between going to these trips with a runner versus the trips that you've done to these locations without a run or a race attached to it? And as I say this, while you're thinking that through, I want to make sure that the audience knows very few of our vacations have not had a run attached to it. I can only think of maybe less than a handful, to be honest with you. So I don't really know what vacationing without a race or a run attached to it is really like for the most part. We've done a few close ones. And of course, the one when Tokyo broke my heart, we went down to Aruba and Curacao. We did Grand Canyon, but even that one was because of Vegas. So I'm curious, how does it differ for you? And does it make a difference? Like, as somebody who's not going to be running the race, do you feel like it maybe colors the experience a little differently?
No, not at all. Because these are such monumental milestone runs for you, having completed the World Marathon Majors. We put so much effort into what we do after the run. So you do all of this running and preparation up to and the extraordinary amount of work you put into what are we going to do afterwards. Our vacation really starts at the end of your run. And I think it's remarkable you can still walk around. And we have seen some fabulous places. That train ride from Austria, right, from Vienna up into Prague, who would have done that? I don't think I ever would have thought, hey, let's go take a train from here to here. It was a part of your plan as we moved about. And that's fabulous. So that's what we do. That's our one trip for what takes 2-3 years sometimes.
Yeah.
In between. And so we're saving money and our resources, and we're planning that whole time. What are we going to do when we get there after the run? And we have truly epic vacations. And more importantly, I don't know if your audience cares or not, it gives us an opportunity to prepay for everything. So we don't really charge anything. And that's important to me. You don't go broke.
I know. So my friend,
we budget.
Buddy is very sensible and he's very fiscally conservative, and I love him for that. He's also absolutely amazed that nobody really there wasn't a lot of love for the budgeting your races and your plan podcast episode. But that is something that we have held very important to our life. So very rarely do I do one of these big races back to back. I have had a year, the Boston to Berlin year was the exception, but more often than not, we do try to plan them every other year. So we have an opportunity to budget and really be able to do the trip in a way that is a little bit more of a luxury versus kind of just doing the race and coming right back. So there's a little bit of that. You said so much in your statement that I want to call attention to, though. One of the things you talked about was the extraordinary amount of effort and training that goes in and preparation that goes into the training for these races, which thank you. I appreciate that you see that. But I want you to know right here and now, and anybody who's listening, that I know you're impacted by that as well, because I'm having to put myself to bed at a ridiculous early hour. You're oftentimes, if I don't have a run crew with me, or if I have a specific pace that I need to hit for a workout, you're oftentimes waking up at 2. I think we waking up at 1:30 to 3 o'clock for especially those summer marathon training sessions. So you can ride your bike so that I am able to run in a way that's a bit safer of an environment. So I know that the training, while it's me primarily doing the running, that you're definitely there side by side through the process as well. So I'm curious if there feels like a little bit of a reward, or like it's worth the sacrifice when we are able to actually do these runcations for specifically the World Marathon Majors kind of comes to mind.
No, it's a pain in the ass. It's an act of love. This is something that you enjoy. Nobody likes going to bed at 5:30 in the morning when kids are still out playing.
PM, not in the morning.
Yeah, and it's still light out.
Okay, I got you.
It is hard, but it's an act of love. And yes, I know we're going to have a lovely time afterwards.
Because you said it's an act of love, which it absolutely is, I want to ask you, if you were to give advice to a non-runner who's entering into a relationship with a runner, besides literally run away.
Yeah, run away.
The only running that you advocate for. But what's the best way that you think a non-runner should help support their running partner?
Well, I think it's very important. Again, this is what the partner wants to do. I mean, you've talked so much about how you wanted to complete the World Majors. It's beyond a bucket list, and you worked so hard for it. And I feel honored that I was able to assist, no matter how frivolous it may have been, to get you there. I think people need to know that you're extraordinarily dedicated to getting prepared. And this dedication takes a year, sometimes more. So we talk about, backing off time 18 months before, but there's a lot of work ahead of time. There is the diet that you have to follow and the food that has to be bought, and really kind of wacky training. Well, sometimes you run 12 miles, sometimes you run 3. Sometimes we have to go somewhere where you have enough asphalt to run on. That's just not available here. So we have to strategically find places that has enough runway, if you will, and travel there. We have to get the bikes ready. They have to be serviced for these long runs. How many bike lights have we gone through to find ones that illuminate the trail well enough? So there is a lot of preparation to do these conditioning, this training. that you go through. And then there's all the supplies that have to be carried. So we bought a special bag for the back of the bike to hold all of the fuel. And you experiment with the fuel to see which ones work and which ones don't. And we have to always route the path that you run by a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts so we can get coffee.
I was going to say, for the record, friends, if you are thinking that your partner is going to join you for those early morning runs, you have to take into consideration the amount of hours that they're going to be joining you. I think probably for Marine Corps, the 50K was the longest that you were out there with me and being tortured, specifically because we were running during Florida summers where you have to go out at 3:00 in the morning. It's already hot at 3:00 in the morning, or it never cooled off even at 3:00 in the morning. So we would try to make it where there was some, I won't call it joy, but at least something to help support you supporting me in this fashion. So I would often plan the routes around a Dunkin' Donuts or something that he could pick up a coffee or have a little bit of popping in somewhere so that he could get some refreshment himself. Because while he's supporting me, there's very seldom things that he can pack or support himself with it. I appreciate that so much. So I want you to know that as well. And I hopefully I expressed that, but likely not sufficiently.
Oh, no, you've been very, very good about that.
Well, thank you. Because it's truly, I know that I don't think if the shoe was in the other foot, I don't think I could do what you do. Actually, I'm fairly certain I would not do what you do because it just feels incredibly selfless. And I think I'm a bit more selfish when it comes to that, but let's not tell everybody how selfish I am. Let's talk about how I'm curious now, realistically, do you feel like a running widow? And does that ever potentially kind of mess with what you're wanting to do with the weekends or your events that you want to go to? Or are you kind of glad to have the house to yourself when I'm out training?
No, actually, I can't do anything. I'm pretty well captured in the house. Can't go far because you never know when a call may come in to go off and whatever, pick up. We've had to do that maybe 2 or 3 times. So I have to be here. We don't get to go do the weekends kind of things that we normally do because it's not just going to bed early for you. You go to bed early days before.
Yeah.
So that you can build up and prepare. So actually everything is captive and it's all around your preparing for the run.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, but I thank you for doing it. So I'm gonna now, because I feel like this is a little painful for you and I don't want to necessarily bring up the nightmares of supporting me. I will say for everybody who is listening, you said after Tokyo, this was it. Like, I'm done. I don't want my life to revolve around running. I want to be able to have my own life as well. And then I think I hit you with maybe about 1.5 years later that I was going to train for Marine Corps. And then Sydney became a world marathon major. And we had a lot of discussion about that. We went back and forth as to whether it really matters if I pursue the next 3 stars. What if we wanted to also express to folks, life is vastly different training for marathons in winters here in Florida because I can go out. I don't have to go to bed as early. I don't have to get up early. He can have his life, but summer endurance training, it does require a completely different approach to it because of the heat and the humidity and how it can truly be dangerous. I'm not much of a treadmill runner, so I tend to want to do most of my runs outdoors. I also like the aspect that heat training helps physiologically to prepare me more for fall races. So there's a lot of different aspects. And I will say that basically what we talked about was that was it. There was like no more real focus on at least fall races. And now specifically, again, we had Sydney. Why, in your words, do you feel, because you didn't just support me on moving forward with Sydney, you've actually encouraged me. Why do you feel that it's important?
So I think it's when you consider I guess I can say this, millions of runners around the world running all sorts of runs, local, maybe regional favorites. And then you have this Abbott World Marathon majors throughout the world. And to complete that was a monumental milestone. You should share with people the number of people who have finished the world majors to date, and then even more, the number of women who have completed It's remarkable. I think tell me, was it 17 or 14,000 women have completed all 6?
It's about 39 to 42% of the field of the World Marathon Major 6-star finishers that are women, which I mean, that's wonderful. And I understand socially and culturally why that's the case. But I do know, and I'm glad that you mentioned that I'm personally on a mission to try to support and encourage more women to go after this really big, I call it a big audacious goal, because while it may take time, I'm going to use the infamous words of your mother, where the time's going to pass anyway. Why should we not do it in pursuit of something that calls to us or that has that passion? And I want to even the playing field, because currently here in the United States or in North America and most aspects of Europe, the field, and by that I mean the amount of participants of a race that goes into any specific race, specifically like Chicago, New York City, or any US or North American race, the field is actually primarily women now. We've made a huge leap forward in this sport becoming very welcoming for women, especially when we think back to not so long ago, thanks to Catherine Switzer. We just broke into being able to participate in the marathon distance and beyond. So what I hate to hear is that internationally, we still have a very large disparity of what we are seeing in pursuits. And even here in the US, there's a big disparity of pursuits of women completing the World Marathon Majors in comparison to their male counterparts. And I have theories on that, and we could talk about that a whole other day if you wanted to come and chat about that. But I do want to go ahead and say that if you guys have not joined the Women of World Marathon Majors Facebook group, because you mentioned it, that's where I would strongly advocate for you guys to join in if you're considering it, because there is a lot of support and encouragement and inspiration from your fellow 6-star or 7-star and beyond pursuits. But that brings me back to Sydney, because if you guys haven't been able to pick up on this yet, not a lot of decisions are made here in the Casa of Extraordinary Strides without us sitting down, or him going for a bike ride and me going for a run and us talking it through. But usually we actually sit these conversations down. And Sydney was a serious heart-to-heart, because when we looked at the numbers financially, I saw a lot of other opportunities of runs that I would rather prioritize, like Rome or Athens, or just there's so many other races. So is it that because I'm going to go ahead and say again, you were kind of raised by a feminist, is that what kind of calls you to supporting me with Sydney, that wanting to support a woman in her pursuit of this really big, audacious goal? Or is it just you think it sounds cool? What is it that helped you kind of really push me towards completing Sydney, or working towards Sydney? Because clearly I haven't even started training for it.
Yeah, but no, my mother had nothing to do with anything.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a very cool goal. And when you look at the membership of the club that you're in, and I think people actually admire your accomplishment. It takes 10 years to complete. That's a lifetime effort. People can get degrees in less time than that. And then for them to spring up at the last minute like a mirage, here's another one. It's like, damn, in order for me to keep my status, I need to go do this. And then I got to go do Africa after that.
I'm so excited about.
And then the tough one is China. If we're not at war, what do we do about China?
Yeah, so we're not going to get into that conversation. But again, this goes back to why we're not using his official name as to whether he would even be able to attend any race there with me. So we're not going to get into that. But I am looking forward to Cape Town, actually. Tell me what this means to you, because you're considering this is something that now that you've gone to all these different races, you want to kind of travel to now the 7 continents, right?
Well, now that you've got us to like 6 of them, yeah, that's just for bragging rights. I can tell my kids.
Just bragging rights. Okay.
Yeah, to tell my kids they're ne'er-do-wells.
And your grandkids.
Slackers.
Okay, we talked a lot about me and running. I want to bring the focus more on you specifically. And I'm going to talk about this segment being kind of like, why are you not a runner yet? So I'm going to ask if you would be willing to tell us all, have you ever tried running? And if so, what was the experience like?
So yeah, I mean, as a teenager, as a young 20-year-old, I ran. Then I got mature, and wisdom comes with maturity.
I'm still waiting for my wisdom. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not true. You signed up for a 5K.
No, I did run when I was a teenager. I was.
You ran as an adult.
I ran the mile in 5 minutes and 27 seconds, which was
which he still talks about to this day.
I was 19.
I know. You have to let that go, my friends. You have to let that go.
That's the end of my running.
Okay, but you did try a run as an adult. I may have not been the smartest gal in the world because I took you to what's considered a hillier or a more difficult course here in Florida. Do you want to share a little bit about that experience, or do you rather have you put it out of your memory totally?
Yeah, that agony I put out because I can't curse. I promised you I wouldn't curse. All I can tell you is that I came in last. There were 92-year-olds who finished before me.
I don't know why people don't realize that the older crew is fast.
One poor guy was waiting where the tent used to be because they had taken it down, because they were told that there was one more guy coming in and he wanted to give me the medal, and I rejected the medal.
That was hard. You still covered the distance, but I understand that you felt like you didn't put in your best performance. And I think that was the first and last time that I actually experienced you tackling a race. Is there any world that you could see yourself signing up for another race?
No.
Okay. I will tell you all that he knows his own mind, and I don't spend a lot of time trying to change it. And I think that that's kind of what helps this entire dynamic work. But now I'm curious, you mentioned that you put big dents in couches, but that's not entirely true. You do have quite a bit of physical aptitude that you have spent time in the past and even now. What would you say your favorite way of staying active is?
Chasing after you.
That's why we're talking right here, because yes, when I was talking to Lynn about spectating, I thought of all the incredible things that you've tackled in trying to chase after me, like New York City, where you couldn't catch up to me, London, which was a madhouse. Like, I don't know how we saw each other at London.
You found me. And what we found is that we would trace out the running route and we would pick places where I could stage up and we could see one another. So we were very, logistic about it. And then the day of the race, particularly when we did London, they closed the train, the very train that we took to go pick out our spots. They closed them because you couldn't cross the street because of the massive crowd of people. It was insane. So yes, trying to chase you is the most difficult thing to do. And I think that would be true with anybody, not just because you're running, but anybody who is fun, unless you're a native of that area, to navigate around and work with the transportation that wasn't there that you were expecting there. And the subways in New York were so slow, you literally outran the subways.
Well, I'm just going to pretend that it's because I'm that fast, but that's not actually the case.
You were that fast.
No, I'm not. Well, I will say, friends, that's why in the Spectator episode, if you didn't listen to it, go back and listen to it. If you have a partner or a friend or a family member, somebody who wants to come spectate, a lot of really good information was in there. Plus, there's the Spectator checklist that you could always sign up for, and it'll be delivered to your inbox. And we talked a lot about that, how there has to be some additional planning before the race. And you have to plan for like a best case and a worst case scenario. As most runners will know, when you have a race day plan, you have an A goal, a B goal, and a C goal. You need to kind of take into consideration of meeting up with your spectators or your family and friends as well, because there are so many times where we had already picked out a point. And as you mentioned, like London, when you popped out of the tube, I think is what they call it, the crowd was just so massive that you couldn't make your way through. So in a place where I could actually find you, or Boston, where the subway system or the train system was so packed.
Tokyo.
I think we didn't even try for Tokyo. I think with Tokyo, you shocked me at the finish line because I was for sure thinking you weren't going to try to navigate in a language that's just so foreign, but you did. I don't know how you did that.
I'm not sure either. A lot of walking. There's a lot of walking involved, and there is some jogging involved to make times and to meet places. So I think it's important too that your audience knows that if you're not able to catch up to a spectator spot, you ought to have one or two places you plan to meet after the run. And there was a lot of phone calling. Where are you? This is where I think I am. You want to meet here? I can't get there because of all the traffic or the roads being closed. So
And this is also why we talked about that too. So there's a couple of things that, friends, I want you guys to keep in mind. Again, things that I've talked about in different podcasts, but that we've learned through experience. If you're a mid-pack or back of the pack runner, or even a front of the pack runner who's utilizing an app that maybe is draining your battery, if you don't have a battery pack with you, little like slimline portable charger, and you didn't take the cord with you, there's a big likelihood that your phone is going to be drained and you're not going to be able to call, like what happened with us in London. That was crazy.
My phone died.
Yeah.
And we thought we knew where we were meeting. And I think at the last minute, the race moved the meetup point. They moved it out of, I think it was Trafalgar Square.
It was actually the nonprofit, because we're going to meet where the nonprofit.
That's
and they
right.
ended up So I was running for charity, and the charity had a meeting point for spectators. But let's be honest, I was severely undertrained for London. So I likely probably came in way later than the meeting point was officially being held by the nonprofit or the charity, and added a whole other spice to the mix where it was just...
Immediately, you're lost in London.
Lost in London. I'm feeling absolutely like poo. Like I was wiped because, again, my training cycle was less than its best for that specific cycle. That was a training cycle that really solidified to me something that I say quite frequently, where you have to pay your bills, and you can either pay your bills when it comes to your training by showing up for your training runs, really, really, really making it a priority, which we've discussed several times, or you can pay your bill on race day, but it's usually going to be with interest rates and charges and late fees and penalties.
Yes. Fees and penalties. Yeah, absolutely.
We always talk about pay your bills and training because it makes an entire race day experience completely different. And I'm going to describe Tokyo. The difference between Tokyo as to how I felt when I finished that, and even with the broken toe, and afterward, like going to cavort through all the different cities. We even did a hike against doctor's orders, but whatever. We had already paid for it in Kyoto. And I think that you would have never known that I had run a marathon versus, again, London, a vast comparison where I was able to do the things we had planned, but it took me quite a few days to get to the point where we were actually moving and grooving to be able to tour the city the right way.
Yeah, that was a scary one. I mean, at the end, I guess we always can meet up at the hotel. That's something we have to say, that after a certain amount of time, if we haven't caught up with one another, we're going to the hotel. You always have to have several meetup places. My phone died. I don't know how it died. So you have to have a battery backup. These are 12, 14-hour days sometimes, and you have to be prepared for that, particularly if we escort you to the start line.
Yeah, which you do.
Yep.
I can't think of one that you haven't. So there's a lot of that. Now, again, friends, if you end up racing as much as I have at this point, you can't expect, or I guess you can, but be prepared to be a little bit disappointed. You can't expect your spectator, your family, your friends, or the folks in your life to go to every single race. So at this point, we have prioritized the races that mean the most for you to be able to spectate. Generally, I don't have you come out for Run Disney. There's no point. Run Disneys are done before a normal wake-up time, or any of the local races, even some of the local races. You came to the finish line of Marine Corps, but that wasn't even something that was...
Marine Corps was different.
Yeah.
Marine Corps was a bucket list. Always wanted to run it. It's not like a Disney run.
Right. We love Disney. I love Disney, but I do think that it is a harder one for your spectators because of how incredibly early they are. So that's just a tough one. So we've learned a lot in this entire journey of going through these experiences. I'm kind of curious if you would indulge me for a little bit longer, if maybe you could share what you think there's one thing that you wish that runners, so me, would understand about their non-running loved ones. So what should I know more about you when it relates to my training? I think I know the answer.
Okay, tell me, because I don't.
I think you're going to say, I don't want to go to bed just because you're going to bed.
Yes, I don't want to speak badly, but I find it a very selfish activity that the whole house has to stop, do whatever it is.
For the record, the whole house does not have to stop. I'm just an incredibly light sleeper.
I have to wear a headset to watch my television. I cannot put anything in the microwave. I have to be absolutely silent.
I'm going to sound like a diva.
For months and months.
Oh, wait, I'm a super light sleeper, and we live in an incredibly tiny location. I've mentioned before, and I'm going to say it again, right before the pandemic, we made the decision to really downsize so that we could travel more. Hello, more World Marathon majors or more runcations. And then the pandemic happened and we both started working from home, and it kind of changed the dynamic of the household a little bit. So I'm going to give myself that excuse, but I'm going to also change the subject. What has being around a runner taught you, if anything, about discipline?
Patience.
I love that. That's so true. What has it taught you, if anything, about discipline, goal setting, and perseverance?
Nothing. But I admire your discipline,
Okay.
your commitment. It would be, I think, really educational for people to see you do walk that talk about consistency all the time. I have to go do my run, but we're going to go meet up. No, I got to do my run. Hey, you'll do your run on the other side of the state. In the Panhandle, it's like a Dr. Seuss story. In a box, with a box, you are very consistent. So definitely admire your tenaciousness. And it's not a hobby. It's a lifestyle for you.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's my passion. I love, as you know, I love working with the runners that I get the honor and privilege to coach. I feel very territorial and almost kind of motherly over them. And I think I spend a lot of priority and time with that, which I know has to probably be a little bit difficult for you.
Which cuts from my time.
Yeah. But you're a big boy. You get to.
But I understand it. I understand it. But there is sacrifice that takes place on my behalf more than I probably want to.
Yeah. Oh, well, I appreciate it.
Because I'm selfish too.
You're not as selfish as I am, though. And I talk about that, and I'm going to take a moment, and I don't say anything to my runners that I wouldn't say to you, so that you are well aware. You probably have even heard me say this. I think as women, and you may roll your eyes, I don't know how you particularly feel about this when I say it. I think as women, a lot of women feel like we have to wear hats where we have to prioritize all of the people and the relationships around us before we prioritize our own wants and needs and desires. And this is the one arena that I feel is incredibly important. If it creates joy in your life, if it creates purpose, if it's something that calls to you the way that I feel like it calls to a majority of people who are listening into this, then you have to make it known. You have to create that communication where people know how important it is to you and prioritize it. Because the reality is that you're never really going to have an optimal time. The non-runners in your life, as much as you support me, you're never going to really, I think, understand why I do this nonsense. But I think it's something that's been communicated fairly in a way where we both understand that big takeaway that it may take away from, I don't know, staying out all night at COD or whatever the case may be.
Whatever it is. Yeah, we do. Yeah, no, you have to know that with your partner, what's important to them. Although it may not be your cup of tea, it is important to them. And so you want them to be successful. You want them to be happy. And so you do what you do. And it's not just running. It's anything in life
that somebody's passionate about.
Yes, you have to let them have that passion, engage in that passion, even if it's not yours. Listen to them, be active in that passion. Yeah, that's just good relationships, I think.
I wholeheartedly concur. I'm now going to ask you a couple of different things that maybe are just kind of some little snapshot, quick fire fun. What's the weirdest running term that you've heard me use, if you can think of one?
Oh, yes. That German word.
The Swedish word.
Whatever that word is. What is that word? Tell me.
Speed play, the fartlek.
Fartlek, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's an odd one.
Okay.
Hard one. You said what?
How about plogging? Plogging doesn't do anything for you? That's also a Swedish term.
I don't remember that one. It was the fartlek that.
Okay. I think that one throws people off since they're.
Yeah, that would. I think I'd find another language. Maybe Norwegian. They're close by. It's got to be something a little different.
I tend to call it speed play, but of course it really is actually called fartlek for a lot of runners. And friends, if you're not familiar with fartlek, it is, again, speed play, the Swedish word for it. And it basically just allows you to change your pacing. Sometimes it's structured and sometimes in its true sense is unstructured. So you kind of go with feel. We'll talk about that in a different conversation because I don't want Buddy over here to have his eyes gloss over anymore when it comes to running. What is the best, if you could remember, or most annoying excuse that I gave you for not doing something, I don't know, going out to a birthday party or something else because I had to go for a run? Do you remember anything like that comes to mind? Or do you feel like while I prioritize my running, I figure out a way to not let it necessarily intrude in the really important aspects of our life?
I don't think anything's surprising. It's pretty well known as we're getting closer to race day, like a boxer gets closer to his match. All focus is on that.
I'm a little curious now what you think about the nutrition and the fueling. Is there anything that you've seen me consume from a runner's fuel, like the goos or gels or Cliff Blocks, that you think actually looks appetizing that you would actually eat? Or does it all make you...
Never. And that damn stuff is in our closets. It's in our pantries. It doesn't stay contained. It falls everywhere. It's stinky.
It's not stinky.
It's stinky.
It is not.
And it's gooey when you put it in the, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask now, what is, if anything, the most ridiculous running habit that you think I have?
Habit? No.
Or quirk?
No.
Okay.
No. It's just, you go for your run, you set your watch, you put on your sparkly gear, and out the door you go. You have no, what do they call that? Habits or customs or rituals that you do. There's none of that.
That you know of. Wahaha.
No, I've seen it. I've seen it all. No.
Okay. Buddy, we've had some incredible conversation here. Again, I want to thank you, but I'm curious if you want to maybe share with me what some of your favorite, or if you have a favorite race experience or race day experience or a trip or anything that you could think of that kind of comes to mind from any of the races that you've spectated or participated in as my number one cheer support crew.
Well, there isn't any one single one because each race is its own. It has its own thrills, and collectively I remember them all. But I'm most impressed in watching the other athletes. I'm impressed by the vast amount of body shapes that are out there, tall, thin, thick. And most importantly, I think the para-athletes that I have seen, because they take away any excuse I may have, that these individuals also train and they perform well. And there's no excuse not to. Again, it doesn't have to be in running, but anything that you do in life, they're out there, they got ready for it, and they did it, and they did it well. So I have to say it really is quite inspiring and motivating, and gives me a whole new sense of respect for people's will and determination.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's kind of like the entire premise of the name change of the podcast is because, as you know, many, many, many moons ago, I told you that I was never really that inspired by the elites, though I think what they do is amazing, of course, but it really is what we see as the everyday runner or
the everyday runner. Yes, and that's right. And for those who don't know, the name of the podcast now, Extraordinary Strides, it's just that because we used to talk a lot about not the elites, as you said, they're wonderful to watch, but really admire the real individual out there slugging it out, what their background was, and it was extraordinary. And yes, that led to the naming of the podcast.
I want to thank you so much, buddy, for coming on here. It's been so much fun. I don't know that we even scratched the surface of how much running has taken over our lives. I mean, it's even something that we bring into discussions when we moved here.
Oh, our family does now.
Yeah, people, everyone.
And it's crazy how much it has taken over. And it's done so in ways that you're not even aware of it until it happens.
Insidiously.
Every time we've relocated, it's based upon where can I run? When we go and visit with a realtor, the number one thing they say, well, you want a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom? No. We need to be able to run somewhere where it's safe, where there's 52 miles of undisturbed asphalt. That dominates everything we do, from what we pick out at the grocery store to
what we have at dinner. Absolutely. You're absolutely accurate.
To how we sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, thank you to my running habit for helping us to prioritize a new mattress. But
yes.
No.
Even going to the store to get shoes. It's not Dick's Sporting Goods or the Academy. We go to somewhere where they... Track Shack.
Yeah.
And everybody should go to a really good professional...
A specialty running store. Absolutely.
That measures your feet. And so we plan that day out. We plan it's going to take a couple hours to do this. And from your sports equipment You did that show on sports bras for women, and that was very important, I thought. And we think all about those things. What's the right gear? What's the right fueling? And the testing that you do, even the workouts that you do. We have to go certain places so that you can do the workout that you're about to present.
Program for athletes, yeah.
For others, they should know you do everything that you ask them to do, and you make changes based on that. And so there's my weekend going somewhere.
But we have created a lot of adventures.
I've read a lot of books.
Yes, that's true. He does a lot of reading in support of my running. But I will say while it has created a lot of need to sacrifice and prioritize discipline and structure, it's also created a lot of freedom and opportunities to travel and see the world very differently.
The memories and to talk to people about the places that we've been. And it makes me feel quite worldly that we experience.
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people are amazed. And none of this would have happened had it not been for your desire to complete the world majors.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah. So it really did. It's given us an enrichment.
See, friends.
I think people look at me differently too when I say we've been here, we've been there. And it's kind of fun to brag about you actually on what you've done, and people ask how you do it.
You're just very sweet and very supportive. But with that said, I want to thank you again. I'm going to say that there you have it, folks. This conversation is proof that you don't have to be a runner to support one. And you don't have to even understand the detail of running culture or why runners do what they do to show up for your partner or family member. And here's where it gets even more fun, though, because inspired by this conversation, when we were talking about making this a possibility and making it a reality, I put together a little bit of a quiz. So if you and your non-running partner or loved one had a blast listening to this episode, I want you to take it a step further or maybe even a stride further. This fun quiz is in this week's newsletter and is called How Well Do You Know Your Runner or Non-Runner? It's quick. It's a little silly. It may surprise you both. It's a little bit honeymooner style. You can take it together, compare your answers, and then share the results with us. So send in your quiz, your stories, your funny disagreements, highlight or shout out your running supporters or any standout moments. You can send it to the Stride Collective, the Facebook group. I'll have that in the episode notes. And we're going to be sharing some of your highlights in an upcoming episode. Who knows? We may even share your love story in this month that's upcoming. So please don't be shy and let's see who really knows their running or non-running stuff. I want to, as always, thank you all for tuning into Extraordinary Strides. I want to thank you, Buddy, for coming along. So whether, my friends, you're out on a run, if you're doing laundry from that run, or sitting on the couch wondering why runners are running, we're grateful to have you here. So don't forget to share this episode with someone who might enjoy it, or maybe someone who needs a little nudge to join you on your next rest day adventure. I'm going to ask you, friends, to keep striding, keep laughing, and remember that sometimes the most extraordinary support comes from the sidelines. So until next time, stay extraordinary.